Sometimes life takes everything from us. That's where our story begins, in Moab, with Naomi. She left Bethlehem with her husband and sons, fleeing famine, hoping for a better life. For a while, things looked up. Her sons married Moabite women Orpah and Ruth. But tragedy struck. First her husband died, then both sons. Naomi was left a widow in a foreign land with only her daughters-in-law. Grief filled her home. Hope seemed lost. The land that promised refuge became a graveyard for her dreams. Naomi felt abandoned by God, her spirit crushed. Hearing the famine in Bethlehem was over, she decided to return home. She had nothing left to lose, only a faint hope for comfort among her own people. Naomi looked at Orpah and Ruth, young women with futures ahead. She could offer them nothing, no sons, no inheritance, no security. Out of love, she urged them to return to their families, to rebuild their lives. "Go back," she said. "Find new husbands. Start anew." It was the only kindness she felt she could give. Naomi prepared for the journey home, expecting to walk it alone. The silence of loss echoed around her, but she pressed on. Her story was not over, though she could not see what lay ahead. Sometimes the end of one chapter is the beginning of another. And so Naomi turned her face toward Bethlehem, with sorrow as her only companion. The road to Bethlehem was long and uncertain. Naomi set out, with Orpah and Ruth at her side. On the way, Naomi stopped and urged them to return home. "May the Lord show you kindness, as you have shown me," she said, pushing them away out of love. Tears fell as they embraced, mourning what was lost. Orpah, after much weeping, chose to return to Moab, a sensible, understandable choice. But Ruth clung to Naomi, refusing to leave. Naomi insisted again, "Go back with your sister-in-law." But Ruth's loyalty was unshakable. She saw Naomi's pain and chose to stay, bound by love, not obligation. Ruth's decision was more than emotion. It was a deep commitment. She was ready to face the unknown side by side with Naomi. Their journey was no longer just about survival, but about unbreakable bonds. Two women, walking into an uncertain future, together. Sometimes, the greatest journeys begin with a single act of loyalty. Ruth's words have echoed through centuries, a vow of loyalty and love. "Don't urge me to leave you," she said. "Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay." Ruth was leaving behind her homeland, her family, her gods. She chose Naomi's people as her own, and Naomi's God as her God. This was more than companionship. It was a new identity, a new faith. "Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried," Ruth promised. She sealed her vow with a solemn oath before God. Naomi saw Ruth's determination and stopped urging her to leave. In Ruth's eyes, Naomi glimpsed hope, a gift of unwavering companionship. Together they walked on, two women against the world. Their bond was stronger than blood, forged in love and shared suffering. Ruth's vow was not just for the journey, but for life. In that moment, Naomi was no longer alone. Sometimes the greatest promises are made in the darkest times. And so they pressed on, side by side. The future was uncertain, but they would face it together. Love had the final word. Naomi and Ruth arrived in Bethlehem at harvest time, but they had nothing. Naomi, broken by grief, told the townspeople, "Call me Mara, bitter." But Ruth refused to be paralyzed by despair. She went to glean in the fields, gathering leftover grain for their survival. By chance, she found herself in the field of Boaz, a wealthy relative of Naomi's late husband. Ruth worked tirelessly, her quiet determination catching the eye of the foreman, and Boaz himself. Boaz asked about her and learned of her loyalty to Naomi. Ruth's reputation for hard work and faithfulness spread quickly. Boaz was moved by her story. He saw not just a foreigner, but a woman of character. God's provision was at work, even when Ruth and Naomi could not see it. Ruth's actions spoke louder than words. She was determined to provide. In the fields of Bethlehem, hope began to grow. Sometimes, the smallest acts of courage opened the door to unexpected blessings. Ruth's faithfulness was about to change everything. The harvest was more than grain. It was the beginning of restoration. In the midst of poverty, kindness found its way. The story was far from over. Hope was taking root. Boaz approached Ruth with kindness, not judgment. "Stay in my field," he told her. "You'll be safe here." He offered her protection, water, and respect, far beyond what was required. Ruth was overwhelmed. "Why show favor to a foreigner like me?" Boaz replied, "I have heard of your loyalty to Naomi. May the Lord reward you." He invited her to eat with his workers, sharing his own food. Quietly, he instructed his men to leave extra grain for her. Boaz's kindness was not just charity, it was personal, generous, and transformative. Ruth's faithfulness had made an impression on the whole community. Through Boaz, God's hand was providing for two widows in need. Ruth returned home with abundance, a sign that hope was returning. Boaz's actions were a ray of light in their darkness. Sometimes, a single act of kindness can change the course of a life. Ruth and Naomi's fortunes were beginning to turn. The seeds of redemption had been sown. In the fields of Bethlehem, God's love was at work. The story of Ruth and Boaz was just beginning. Kindness had opened the door to a new future. Ruth returned home with arms full of barley, astonishing Naomi. When she revealed Boaz's name, Naomi saw hope for the first time in years. Boaz was a kinsman redeemer, a relative with the power to restore their family. Naomi devised a bold plan. Ruth would approach Boaz at the threshing floor, seeking his protection. Ruth prepared herself, trusting Naomi's wisdom and God's providence. At night, she quietly lay at Boaz's feet, a humble, risky appeal for redemption. This act was a plea for Boaz to fulfill his duty, to rescue them from poverty and obscurity. Ruth's vulnerability was matched by her faith. She placed her future in Boaz's hands, trusting his honor. Ruth's obedience was a testament to her courage and trust in God. In the quiet darkness, she waited for Boaz's response. The fate of two women rested on what would happen next. Sometimes faith means stepping into the unknown. Ruth's courage would soon be rewarded. The turning point of their story had arrived. Redemption was within reach. Boaz awoke to find Ruth at his feet. She asked him to spread his garment over her, a request for marriage and redemption. Boaz was moved by her loyalty and courage. He promised to help, but explained there was a closer relative with the first right to redeem. Boaz vowed to resolve the matter honorably. The next day, he gathered the town elders and presented the case. The other relative declined, fearing for his own estate. Boaz then claimed his right, sealing the agreement with a sandal. Boaz was free to marry Ruth and redeem Naomi's family. The community witnessed this act of restoration. Boaz's integrity and Ruth's faithfulness had changed their destinies. The story that began in loss was now filled with hope. Redemption had come through courage, loyalty, and honor. Ruth and Naomi's future was secure. The legacy of their choices would echo for generations. Sometimes doing the right thing changes everything. Boaz and Ruth's union was a testament to God's providence. The story of two widows had become a story of new beginnings. Restoration was complete. Before the elders, Boaz declared he had redeemed Naomi's land and taken Ruth as his wife. The people blessed them, praying for a legacy like Rachel and Leah. Ruth gave birth to a son, and joy returned to Naomi's life. The women praised God for providing a redeemer and restoring Naomi's hope. Ruth's love was celebrated as greater than 7 sons. Naomi, once bitter, now cradled her grandson, her heart full. The emptiness was gone, abundance had come. God had turned mourning into joy, loss into legacy. Ruth's faithfulness brought restoration to an entire family. The famine of the heart was over. God's faithfulness was on display for all to see. The story was no longer about loss, but about new life. Through Ruth and Boaz, a new chapter began. Their story was a testament to hope, love, and redemption. Sometimes, the greatest blessings come from the most unlikely places. The story of Ruth and Naomi is more than ancient history. It's a living message. It teaches us to trust God in hardship, to believe He is working even when we cannot see. Ruth's loyalty and Boaz's kindness are models for our own lives. We are called to love selflessly, to stand by each other, and to show generosity to those in need. In times of loss, we can be like Ruth, steadfast and faithful. In times of abundance, we can be like Boaz, kind and generous. Our choices matter. They can bring hope and change lives. Ruth's story points to a greater redemption. Her son Obed became the grandfather of King David, placing her in the lineage of Jesus. God's grace includes everyone, no matter their past. No one is an outsider in His kingdom. The story of Ruth is our story. God taking brokenness and building something beautiful. Every act of faith and kindness echoes through generations. We are invited to be part of this legacy of hope. God's faithfulness endures, turning sorrow into joy. The story of Ruth reminds us, redemption is always possible.